Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Art of the Game, where us three game masters experienced in various games are going to give you some tips, some tricks, and maybe debate over some of our combative thoughts, differing views.
Damn you, Marks. How dare you disagree with me when I'm clearly right?
We're all different alignments from D&D,
Yeah.
and we conflict. But no, so Woody originally came up with the concept of this series, so why don't you tell us what is the name? What are we doing today? What's going on?
Okay, well, this is going to be another multi-part one. Well, that's thematic, but we're talking about doing how to handle combat encounters, which I think is important because there's a question of like how you run them and what the sequence is. And there's a couple of topics in this that we're going to be. So this will be the part one, and so we're going to talk about like the problem of how you handle a combat encounter, and the key component is you got to keep it moving and you don't want it to lag. And this is also really important, particularly in the age where a lot of people want to stream games, and or maybe you're doing something at a convention in a public venue and you have an audience, right? And so, like, you definitely don't want your combat encounters to be boring. And like we were talking about one particular show that I checked out, which I'm definitely not going to mention who they are, but it's like, I mean, I couldn't even get 10 minutes of the first episode because the combat encounter, they start out with a combat encounter is like so boring. And like, I just tuned out. So, but yeah, take away, gentlemen. How do we make combat interesting? How do we keep it fun? How do we keep it moving? So it doesn't lag and people get bored.
There's so many aspects of this, but one thing is, you never want someone to come to their turn and that's when they start thinking about their turn. If you got a player that has a habit of that, I was just doing something that I don't do well enough, but Matt Mercer is really good at this, where he says, hey, it's your turn and you're on deck to come up next, right? He always reminds people who's coming next to kind of remind them.
Really good. That is really good, yeah. Well, he has to. He has 8 players.
Right. Too many. But
way too many, yeah.
Yeah. But he's good at that. Also, something he's good at, which I actually have a lot of trouble replicating. I don't know how he does it. His combats are always so dramatic in a way to where you're kind of hanging onto your seat on every little thing that's happening in it.
Which it's about the presentation.
Yeah, maybe. So there's something with that for sure. And don't, if you have a lot of minions, don't sit there and deal with them individually. That's something that I've talked to you about this. I hate virtual tabletops with a lot of minions. It really destroys a game because it gets so boring just waiting for you to click the right button on the VTT to do each one individually because they all have their same initiative. They all have their own individual initiatives and stuff like that. You know, when you're playing with dice, you can pick up 5 dice and roll them all at one time. You know, and it makes things go so much faster.
I got a whole handful of D20s right here.
Yeah.
You know,
well, one less now. I heard.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I have mine right here. I don't know why.
I rolled a 7. Well,
I'm at work and I literally pick these up and roll them when I'm bored.
Marks, what's where do you land on this one?
Yeah, that's all good advice. I guess what I try to do sometimes in person, I play a lot of music and I don't have to worry about copyrights. So I'll definitely shift the music just to make it kind of set the stage a little bit. I really try to push them. Like, come on, what are you doing? Especially early. Like if they hem-haw, I'm just like, oh, they attack. You know, I'm just gonna be like, you know, if you're taking too long, the world keeps moving. So if you keep taking too long, stuff's gonna happen. Or suddenly the back, like another monster shows up, you know, while you're waiting. And that tends to get people going, oh crap, let's move. But I just try to make sure people don't think too long. And if they make a mistake, if they forget something, which they do sometimes, I have sometimes a barbarian will forget to raid or something until the second round. I'll remind them after the fact, but I'm like, you just got in a rush and forgot. You know, that happens in combat.
I also don't have a problem letting somebody jump in with like, if they go, oh, I could have done this action, but they still have like a minor action available, bonus action, whatever, or, you know, sure.
I could have done it at the beginning. Right.
Let them jump in and use it because it's like it's a resource that has it. And sometimes like, oh, maybe I didn't move. Can I move now? Sure, you know, like, well, you can't do anything, but you know, but like, you know, that stuff's important. But like, I don't think that you should shy away from making suggestions, right? Because like you do have the situation where some people are more on the ball than others, and some people like for me, I would always be thinking ahead. Like I generally know I'm ready to go with what I'm going to do, but some people are not, right? And yeah, like suggesting, hey, you're up next, that's a good plan. But also if they're kind of indecisive, don't it's not a bad thing for the GM to go, well, here's a couple options.
Yeah, I'll do that.
This is the situation you're in. How you can respond, and like, but if you're going to go that route, only give 2 choices, and obviously you're trying to get them to start thinking of their own ideas, but never give somebody so many options that they get stuck in like indecision. If you're going to suggest stuff, always keep it binary, but don't like tell them what they're going to do. You phrase it in a way where like, you're trying to get them to make a decision about what
you could do this or you could do that.
Yeah, but
I do that, and you're right. Never give them just one, because if you give them one, they think, well, the GM just told me to do that, right? But if you suggest 2 of them, then they have an option, and you can always throw on or anything else you can think of, right? But like you do this, this, or anything else you can think of.
Yeah. The whole point is to get them, coming up with stuff, and you want to encourage creativity too. Like if somebody has a crazy plan and it isn't necessarily fit within the game mechanics, but like they can do it, I would, look for reasons to say yes. That's kind of a mantra these days. Professor GM likes to say that, but but I mean, yeah, you're looking like I would encourage creative thinking, because if you're giving people opportunities to think about like new ideas and you're more inclined to agree with them and let them try it, that certainly gets them more invested and wanting to participate, for sure.
We could have a whole episode on that, actually. How do you get people to be creative?
Yeah.
Because it is a difficult thing. And we might actually have one now. Think about it.
We may at this point. Yeah. So I have to go through and check the list to make sure we haven't already done it when I'm proposing topics. But like on the subject of minions, like you have lots of unless there's a reason for somebody to be on their own initiative spot, like a named bad guy, generally if there's a pile of minions, I just give them of the same class. I just give them all the same initiative. And just
same.
Okay, we're at the number 5. Good, we're at number 5 initiative order. Fine. We're just banging out. Okay, this guy's over here. This guy's doing that. Roll it damage. Okay, hit you. Get this. Get it done quick. Because the focus needs to be on the players.
The interesting thing is, DC 20 guy for DC 20 Dungeon Coach, he actually makes it so the initiative is always a zipper. So you don't actually roll for initiative of your enemies, but you always make them go in between your players. I don't know what I think about that. So it's always like a zipper effect for the bad guys and good guys.
You're just rolling to see who goes first, right?
Yeah, you just roll to see who goes first, and that's it.
I don't think that's bad, but there is, like, tactically speaking, the encounter does break down in different ways depending upon the initiative order, right? Like, and a guy who goes first can always delay it, right? But if he wants to, or she, but like, how that lines up has a huge impact on it. Because if your bad guy ends up going first, like that's a hell of an advantage. But also being able to see what everybody did and then reacting to it is also kind of nice sometimes too. Like I don't necessarily mind going last in the initiative order, really.
It depends. I actually think he just came out with really new rules, and it's interesting because he has a encounter DC, and if half or more people succeed at the encounter DC for their initiative, then the person who got the highest initiative can pick who goes first on their side, basically.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's kind of like the rogue going, "Get up there, fighter!" I think it's kind of funny in a way.
Get up there, rogue.
Right?
But I mean, like, when dealing with like keeping a combat encounter, like how to handle combat encounters, right? Like, if we're just saying like majority of players are playing D&D, right? Like you want to get your initiative out fast, right? So, you want to get that combat started. So you're calling on people. What's your initiative? I call on everybody. I don't wait for them to tell me. I'm like, okay, Greg, Marks, like what's your initiative? And I'm getting that done quickly. And then once we've got that figured out, okay, well, we set the stage. We call in people, and you want to keep it flowing, right? But there's also another element too. Do you use terrain? Do you use maps? Do you use miniatures? Right? I think I've said this before. I think this is our first episode. I said this, but there are times when like theater of the mind works well, but I'm a big fan of using minis, particularly if you're in a scenario where there's enough complexity to it that you need to know where people are, right?
Yeah.
And then they have these map books. I've got these things that are really great. I've been collecting the shit out of these things. There's a company called Loke that makes these map books. Yeah, Greg's busting out his. Yeah, exactly.
Same one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And these things are wonderful. Oh my god, and like all these cool maps. And my only regret is that I've invested heavily in HeroClix and Mage Knight, and these things are at the at the smaller scale. So it's
oops.
But like we actually used this map for a Castle Siege battle.
Cool.
Yeah,
I should mention that these are not mine. They're actually Pat's from the other group that we play with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he just leaves them here because this is where we play usually.
But they're great, and they're not super expensive. But like, there's so many resources now for maps. Like, there's like a company called Chepeku has a whole bunch of virtual maps. You can get huge map packs if you're doing on virtual tabletops, and some of those are animated, which are really neat. And then you've also got what's that one where you build it virtual world? Crap, I can't remember now. But Tailspire.
Tailspire, the 3D one.
Yeah. But like my friend Keenan was testing out one, and it was somebody had built a whole modern city, and it crashed his computer just loading it.
I bet.
Yeah. So someone's pretty involved.
I would just, if you do use a VTT, I would be very careful with minions. I would not even use their skills in the VTT. Just freaking roll a bunch of dice to make it fast, because it really slows things down to have to try to use the specific little macros and all the things in those VTTs.
Yeah, then you would know. Because you can actually you can pick up a D20, you can roll it real quick, and you can go, okay, yeah, this guy's done his thing, or you can pick up 3 of them, right? Which, and then
everyone has different color dice, right? Oops. So you can one less now for me too, but so it's easy to pick like who's who when you roll them all at once.
Yeah, and also, one thing is, like, for me, like, I've got, since I'm using proficiency dice, I have these. I've got a dice set that's honey colored that my wife got me. So I've got, now I can roll those two together, and then I've got my glow in the dark set, and now I've got, these are like that. So I'm rolling these together, and now I know which dice goes with which character, and that actually works really well. I'm really happy with that way of doing that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the other thing is, I would give if you can, give the bigger bad guys unique abilities that are interesting, right?
Yeah.
To keep it so people are like, oh, what are they going to do? And to actually know those abilities. You don't want to sit there and be looking through character stat blocks and be like, what am I going to do on my turn as the GM, right? Because that really also can slow things down a lot. So,
well, because like, you can actually get away with some of that, but you have to be on top of it enough that you can go, you can
reference it fast.
Yeah, you reference it fast. Yeah. So another thing about, so like, combat encounters are famously take time. Like, one of the things that'll so when you have an RPG, it's basically divided into 3 kinds of encounters. You have social encounters, puzzles, and the combat, right? And I'm of the opinion, obviously other people will difference, but like, I think half of the experience should be combat encounters, because that's the fight is kind of what a lot of people show up for, that excitement. And then the other 2 are like 25% each, right? And then the rest of it is, everything else is just, it's a story, right? But if
you're about romance, we gotta have romance.
well, the thing about it is, like, I'm not really a random encounter guy. Like, I kind of a storyline builder GM, and I'm of the opinion that there should never be a fight in the game that doesn't advance the story forward in some way. Even when you're looking at like a dungeon where it's just full of encounters with monsters, that's still advancing the dungeon experience, right? But like, I don't think you should ever just throw some dice and have a random encounter just to have something happen, because the characters are having a story, right? So each fight should be significant, and when it's over, something should have happened that matters to the experience and advancing the plot, right? And so and so you should be thinking about this too. Like, it's what happens at the end of that fight. And how like, okay, so you're fighting a bunch of orcs. You've slayed the raiders, right? But what were they doing? Why were they there? Who were they attacking? And is this a something where you're pursuing them? And is now there a repercussion because you killed them? Is the rest of the tribe coming after them, right? These are important factors to consider. And so it's not just a matter of like how efficient you can run the fight. It's a matter of like, what does it have to do with the greater narrative?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all that. The nothing's more boring than just pick up job. Told you to go kill these 3 things. You go kill the 3 things. Turn in job. Right?
And
It's
you can absolutely do
yeah.
that, but there's so much potential there to
Yeah.
use that against or for the players, right? Um, and I think there's another one too. Is like a fights can take up a lot of time because you're dealing with minutia of sequences, right? And so it's like you obviously you don't want it to be boring, but I think you should understand that like if you've got a boss fight, that's the entire session. And it may go into the next session, right? So it is important to be able to run it efficiently, but also understand that it's not going to be done in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah, unless you play Mithras and you get your arm blown off.
or you're playing with Greg and he secretly plans for every combat to be done in three turns.
Or we played and I play on a different as a player on a different actual play thing, and we play Marvel superheroes, and we played a game where I came up with an amazing plan that luckily worked, and we ended up getting through all the bad guys, got to the main bad guys, and we took them all out in one round of combat, and it was like, what?
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
that was wild. Our GM was like, I think he thought that was going to take 2 sessions or something.
I bet he was pissed. Oh my god! But I mean, like but it is like combat encounters can take a while, but just because they're long doesn't mean that they're boring or uninteresting.
Yeah. You're going to make sure your combat doesn't become repetitive. You got to make sure the pacing keeps up, so nobody waits too long for the next round.
Yep.
You do that kind of stuff, that'll help. And then what I always try to do is be very careful about setting the same threats over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. So like
and also good record keeping. Be like I have a notebook I always use, and I'll have like keeping track of like how much damage the bad guys are taking, and then I also have like the initiative order, and I'm doing hash marks every time somebody does something. But it is also very easy to kind of like lose track of like, oh wait, who was this block of hit points I've been tracking? Oh god, who was fighting that one again? And that's kind of where having the minis can be very helpful. Keeping track of who's who, right? Because I've had that happen. I'm like, oh, good enough. Keep it going.
Mm-hmm. Don't watch it again. Don't look back.
Well, you're doing your best. There's another aspect of combat encounters too, where but I think we've talked about this before, but like, you don't necessarily want it to be over too fast either, because you also want a satisfying encounter. Like you're not going to cheat, but the guys are also, they've signed on for an experience, right? And sometimes you're seeing this bad guy you think was going to be a real threat. He's dropping too fast, and maybe you need to add a few extra hit points on there. Because like in some games there's a variable, and oh well, this guy may be in the middle, or maybe they're a little lower, but maybe you have to put him up towards the high level. And I've even had situations where it's like, oh crap, well I guess I'm leveling this guy up, and I immediately jumped him up to a higher level in the fight, because I realized I screwed up, and I didn't give them a challenge equal to their power. Because I've said this many times, like an organized group of players that know their stuff and they're working as a team will hit way above their weight class. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about more of that in part 2, because when we get into challenge ratings. But it's like
challenge ratings.
How effective your party is how good they can work as a team. And sometimes they are way too organized, and you might have to pivot in the middle of the fight, and that's okay, because you don't want it to be unsatisfying for them either.
And keep in mind, sometimes that satisfying part is they planned so well, and it was such a good plan that it does make the fight easy, and that's okay too.
It is okay,
as long as that's
yeah. You don't want to steal that victory from them. Exactly. I was listening to a video that Animated Spellbook did, and he said that he was like all sheepishly admitting something, and that he was like figured his players would be pissed off when they finally found out. But he only tracks damage in blocks of 10. So if you did like,
I was about to suggest that.
Well, because I think you've said you've done that too. But like, let's say you do 12 damage. Well, he only counts the 10 points, and he tracks it down like that until he gets to the point where, like, say your last 20 or 30, and then he starts tracking it more, precisely. And that is I wouldn't do that for like an average fight, but I think that potentially is not a bad plan for a boss fight.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can use your tallies. It makes it easy.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
who does this?
Animated spellbook guy.
Okay.
Z Bashu. He was talking about that in one of his videos.
Also, this will sound sacrilege to some people, but
here we
go. Whenever you track hit points, it's way easier to track the damage they've taken than the hit points remaining. So if they, so like just add, if they do like 10 damage, then 20 damage, then another 15 damage, go 10, 30, 45, right? Like track it like upward like that. Don't try to take their total and go downward.
It's funny you say that, because that's what I do. And I just do that, but it never occurred to me that anyone would do anything different. But
most people track downward, I believe.
Yeah, see that's an interesting idea, but you're right. It actually is easier because see what I do is I write down, let's say 81, that's their hit points. Then I just track the damage they're inflicting until I get to that point. And then it only gets weird when like they have regeneration or you have to track damage reduction and stuff as you go. And but
then you have to do some subtraction. Yeah,
and it's interesting. Another thing that comes up is like, because you also have to think of describing the battle. Part of it is also keeping it dramatic and interesting, like you're talking about with Matt Mercer and how he does it, right? And so you can also get people invested by like describing the have them like describe their move, right? And then or even like describing it as they do it, but you also have to kind of point out sometimes the creature wasn't as hurt as you thought it would be, and they're like, oh shit, there's a resistance, and some players are not very good at figuring that part of it out.
It's part of making the monsters interesting of some sort. And I think we have something on this before about, I think we did. We had another episode talking about how to make monsters interesting with that.
We did.
Don't be afraid.
Yes. Absolutely, we did. Yeah. But there's also the presentation of like, okay, well, your creature's resistant to slashing, so I'm hitting with a sword, and it's got DR5 against damage reduction 5 against slashing. And they're not hurting it. They're going to keep going with that sword because they are not necessarily going to catch on. Not everybody will. And so sometimes your presentation, you might have to present it in a way to kind of like imply that they're going the hard route,
I always ask people if they're like, I attack with whatever. Okay, well, what's that look like? Just get them to start painting a picture a bit, and then I'll describe what kind of damage it was, and then I always let people describe when they kill it, and they're like, "Oh, it's dead. How'd you kill it?"
I actually wanted to mention that because that is something I see GMs doing lately is like describe the kill.
How do you want to do it?
Yeah, how'd you finish it off? Like, well, it's kind of like in Force Unleashed, you always had these really cool cinematics to end the fight, and you had to hit. It was a quick time event, but it's like they looked really cool. Where you're jumping up on top the ATSD and you're hitting it with lightning, and then you come down on it with cutting it in half and all these things. And your players can do stuff like that too, and it can be a good way of getting them invested in the fight. And when they know they get that dramatic moment.
I wrote down a lot. We talked about having no mindless battles. Have them connect to the story. We talked at the beginning. Make something interesting with what they're doing. And don't make the monsters normal. Like make it so they have resistance, maybe even immunities, maybe damage reduction. Maybe they have interesting abilities. Maybe they can swallow people. Who knows? The techniques for speed, which I think this one is actually very important in 5e in general, because 5e can go very slow.
I think it's relevant to any RPG, really.
It is, but any tactical RPG can really slow down, I think. And that's what makes it fun. So you need to figure out how to make it work, right? So
to think of.
Yes, that's how most people say think.
Okay, good. All right, cool.
You don't know even English, God. But roll multiple dice. VTs can slow. The telling who's on deck, who's coming next, so they know that to start thinking at least. You mentioned good record keeping and the techniques there, and always try to make satisfying encounters. Big baddies shouldn't go down too fast unless they plan really well, and that's the satisfying part of it, right? Because they made an amazing plan. And don't be afraid to change things in the battle, like, oh wow, I didn't make this guy nearly powerful enough. I'm gonna beef him up a little bit. That's okay.
I actually have something I think may add to this too. I'm looking at this. So players, particularly in modern games, have consumable resources. You have limited bullets, right?
Yeah.
And you want them to feel like concerned about running out of ammunition. Of course, they're naturally going to get lots of bullets, but you don't keep track of those resources with the bad guy. unless there's like a particular artifact he's packing, like a wand with so many uses. But like, you know, the bad guy always has enough, right? And like it you know, like they only run out of bullets if they roll a fumble or something, right? And but figure out what they used after the fight, because if you're keeping track of their ammunition, unless you want that dramatic moment, they're like, oh shit, they have to reload, which they should eventually. Unless you need that moment to have that be a dramatic part of the encounter, all it does is slow things down for you.
Yeah, for sure.
The bad guys have enough for the encounter generally. It's it's real, but you want the players to keep track of that, because they need to feel that squeeze. You know, like they need to spend their actions reloading, because it's part of their tactical tactical aspect of it for them.
That goes down here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and then you go, oh well, it looks like they used up all their bullets, guys. Sorry, you know.
No, always let them find a little.
A little bit, yeah, but enough to keep them going. But like, oh well, they were firing the rocket launcher. They've got 2 rockets left, guys. That's just how it is. You know?
Yeah.
So cool. All right, well, we got an episode.
That's a wrap.
Nice.
It'll be part 1. Remember, list these 2 as part 1.
Wrap, folks.
Challenge rating part 2.
Oh, I mentioned a lot of other episodes, so check out the playlist.
Absolutely.
Or the game and other ones we got on there on the channel. With genre play and behind the dice and fixing the game and our interviews on Genretainment. So subscribe, and of course, please leave a comment below if you have something you would like to suggest, like some tip of something you do. If you used successfully in the past, make it a conversation.
Leave just the tip.
Just a tip, though.
Yeah, just the.
You can even leave 2 just tips if you want.
Yeah.
Anyway,
some animals, I don't know.
I once took the tip off my finger with a pipe cutter.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, it was a good day. Yeah, it grew back.
Just roll to 1. You gotta fumble.
Well, they have these things
short rest.
that cut water line, and so I'm just yeah. Anyways,
the PVC pipe. Yeah.
Well, it's like PEX light, but yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Let's end the episode.
That's the end of the episode. And everybody, please go out, play your games, and don't cut your thumbs off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't be like me.
Yeah.
Well,
until we encounter you again.
I see what you did there.
When the dice roll high, we touch the sky. But when they crash, it's a belly laugh. Genre play.